Alright everybody, welcome to a freestyle game dev training tutorial. My name's Kevin. We are working in Unreal Engine 5.1 and specifically on blueprints, the editor utility widget blueprint. If you have previous versions of Unreal, a bunch of these things may still apply, but as I said, this is Unreal Engine 5.1. Now, originally, this was going to be the foundations for our intro visual scripting course. Ultimately, I spent days banging my head against the wall trying to figure out how to get some of these things to work, and ultimately decided that that is not the right foundation, but that it could make a really cool standalone training tutorial with blueprints. So I would consider this more of an intermediate tutorial, but if you're feeling adventurous, feel free to check it out. I am going to go step by step, and we are going to be building this tool blueprint widget together. So first, let's take a look at what exactly we are building. We'll hop into Unreal and take a look at what we've got. You can see here we have a scene with a bunch of cubes in it. And the general gist is, as a final product, when we're done, we will be able to pick a bunch of objects within our level and click a sim button, which we created. And what will happen is it's automatically and randomly going to change those objects' rotations and simulate them falling to the ground. So if I escape out of that, they reset back to where they were, and I can run the sim again. It will randomize the rotations and drop it in. Now, the cool thing about this is when we're done, once the cubes are settled, or even earlier if we want to, we can apply those transforms back to the original cubes, so this would become their starting position. So for example, if we maybe move one of these. Ooh, what did I just press? If we move one of these up here, and we'll just move a couple of these up here just to make the sim a little more interesting. We pick all of our actors, we simulate that. They're going to randomize, they're going to fall towards the ground, and any point I want to, I can click apply. What's going to happen is it's going to snapshot that, and then that is going to become the new starting position for those cubes. So if I wanted to finish the simulation, I can do the same thing. They'll kind of bounce along the ground, settle, and I can choose apply. Now, this is potential, and then what will happen is it'll take that as a snapshot, and then it'll apply those to the original position. This is potentially cool as a starting point and foundation for, environment prop placement tool. Anything where you need to place a bunch of props really quickly within your scene, and you just want to drop a bunch of them in there, have them sim, fall into place, and just make it look natural. So this is what we're building. We're going to go step by step, starting from scratch. So with that, let's hop into a blank Unreal and get going. Okay, so what we've got is we've got a blank level, and what we're going to do is we're just going to create a folder to work in. It doesn't matter whether you're doing this in a project or an empty scene or whatever it is. I'm just going to put this in a freestyle tutorial. And then in here, we are going to create our editor utility widget. Now, just a quick caution, for some reason, if I tried to create it from the blueprint class, it didn't register properly. So I found that if I went to editor utilities and chose editor utility widget, if I create it here, everything works as expected. So editor utility widget, place props is what we're ultimately going to be potentially using this tool for. So we'll just create that, and we'll double click to open it, and then I am going to dock this. Now, one of the cool things about an editor utility widget is it's kind of all the things. So with an editor utility widget, we get a UI, plus we get a graph, so we can do all kinds of stuff. Now, as we work through this, we're going to be doing this step by step. One of the very first things I did when I was trying to break down this problem was to start with the basics. Can I get this to run? Can I get it to even print a string? And to do that, we need a button. So let's start with our button. If you've never worked with Slate, it can be fun, but for now, what we're going to do is let's just make this simple, and we'll just go through all the mistakes I went through. So first, let's drop in a button, and this button is called button 45. I'm going to rename this to be button cube. Then If we want, let's go ahead and get some text on this cube. And if we click on the text over here on the right in our details, I'm going to change this text block to be to say cube. That way we have a button with a cube in it. And one of the reasons, or one of the cool things about working with a button is when you look at it, when you click on the button, in the top, in the details, you'll notice that it says it is a variable. That means it's already available for us to use, so we can kick straight in and see if our button even works to begin with. So I'm going to hop into the graph, and I'm going to delete everything we have in here right now. Reason being because we're going to be making our own events, and if we select our button variable that is predefined for us just by creating the button, you'll notice down here we have a bunch of events that are already predetermined that we can use, and one of them is on clicked, which is perfect because we want to click our button. So I'm going to select the on clicked button, and we're going to keep this simple to start with. We're going to do the good old-fashioned print string, and I'm going to print, let's do make a cube. Make a cube. So first step for me was, can I even get a button to work? So let's compile and save this. Now let's go back to Unreal, or to our level. We'll right click on our utility widget, and you'll notice at the top it says run editor utility widget. When I do this, it pops up a window that has our button in it, and our button has the word cube underneath it. Now first, let's test our button, and I'll show you what's cool about working with editor utility widgets. If I click this button, nothing prints on my screen. No, it's not working. That's not the case. If we look at our output log, you'll notice at the bottom, it says make a cube. Our button totally worked. The reason nothing printed on our screen is we're not actually running the level right now, so nothing prints there, but it does print in our output log, which is perfect. So what we're going to do is I'm going to keep this window open, and I'm going to show you a couple of the cool things about this. If I go back to my editor utility widget and I go back to the designer, I know, for example, that we're ultimately going to have two more buttons. Those buttons are going to be the sim button and the apply button. So let's just go ahead and create those. I'm going to take this button and I'm going to drag it onto my canvas panel. I'm going to call this button, let's rename this to button sim. And I'm not going to go any further right now because right now my buttons are sitting on top of each other. They're stacked. And that's because we have no wrapper around these that kind of separates them out. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to replace this canvas panel with a horizontal box. And when I do that, you'll notice that my buttons stretch out. So now I have them next to each other. So we can go back into our horizontal box, and I can drag the text in to the sim button, and I'm just going to click on that, and I'm going to change this to sim. Now here's the cool thing. I don't have to rerun a level or anything. If I simply compile this and save it and we go back to test, you'll notice that my buttons have updated. I don't have to rerun it, I don't have to do anything. It's like an instantaneous update. So if I wanted to, I could take this, undock it, and work a little bit smaller, and we'll see that as I make updates to this, this will automatically update to reflect those. So if I drop in my last button underneath this horizontal box, I put some text underneath it, and the text for this one is going to be apply. When I compile this, it's going to update my widget right away. So the iteration process when working with an editor utility widget is really fast, which is great. Now, I'm going to go ahead, just for cleanliness, I'm going to rename this button apply. And I'm going to our button sim is already renamed. Now I'm going to go back to docking this because I don't need to see these updates right away. But overall, that's there. So now we still have our cube, we have our sim, and our apply. That's great. Now, remember, we're going one step at a time. Now that our UI is kind of pretty much all that we need, let's start adding the functionality. And this is going to get into kind of some of the first hurdles I ran into, because what happened was, in our button cube, the first thing that I wanted to try to do was I wanted to try to spawn an actor. And when I dragged off of this from here. I tried spawn actor from class. And if I pick the class of, let's do a static mesh. Okay. Then what's going to happen is, just like normal, we have to set the component. So set the static mesh. And in this case, we're going to use cube. And the cube we're going to use is going to be I'm not going to use the engine meshes. I'm going to use the basic shape. Okay. And location and everything should be fine. So let's compile this, save it just in case we crash. And I am going to press cube. All right, great. Oh, I don't want to move the floor. Okay, here's our static mesh act. We can now move this up. That actually worked really well. Now, originally I had a problem with this where that actually didn't show up. And so what I had to do in order for this to work properly was I needed to get a hold. So if you have a problem with this, just as a general heads up, it turned out that I needed to get a hold of the current level editor subsystem. And there's all these new subsystems that I didn't even realize were available. So let's just get the level editor subsystem. And for some reason in here, I just had to set, if I just set the current level by name. Set the current level by name, just in case you have to do this if you're having problems. And the name of our current level that we're using right now is just called test. If we compile this and we go back to our level, we compile and save this. This shouldn't change any of our functionality. I'm just going to move this cube up. If I create another cube, I'm going to move it up. So now we're at a point where I have a quick way to add act. Whoops. I want to lock this floor. Can I lock this floor? I thought I could lock it. Oh well. So let's get the third one. We've got 3. You get the idea. Now we can actually spawn mesh actors, which is great. At this point though, I'm not going to spend a lot of time doing that. I am just going to quickly duplicate these with the Alt key. So we have a series of static meshes to work with. The reason we went through that exercise was, once again, first step, can I get an object to spawn on my level if I wanted to? Answer is yes, I can, which is cool. And then the next step was, at this point, how do we make it sim? We've got a bunch of cubes now. What we'd like to do is we'd like to create a sim for these cubes. So we're going to go ahead and work on our next button. All right, that's enough. We have enough cubes now. One more. All right, we've got plenty of cubes. Now, let's go back and get our second button to work. So back here, if we click on the button sim, what we can do is the exact same thing. We can add our onClicked event. Now, once again, one of the first things that I tried to do or was struggling with was getting all the actors and everything like that, how it was working, etc. So I went through here, I was like, okay, fine. First thing I need to do, and I'm going to make some mistakes, we're going to go back and fix this. I thought, all right, I'm going to get all selected actors. I couldn't, or say, so get selected actors. Okay, let's try that. I don't know what this scouting thing is. That's kind of weird. And then I'm like, for each one, let's do a for loop. For each one, all I'm going to do is I'm going to cast to a static mesh actor. And if that is successful, I'm going to set the actor rotation. So let's set actor rotation. Or no, we'll skip that for right now. Not even gonna do that. I'm going to set simulate physics. So let's set simulate physics on the static mesh component. And we need to make sure that we check the box to simulate. And then when we're done with this, we need to figure out how to get this to actually simulate. So what I thought I'd do is I thought I'd do simulate. Nothing comes up. Can't find it. Okay. Well, if I uncheck my context sensitivity, I can do editor play simulate. That is a level utility. How do I get this? If I just click on it, this doesn't work. If I compile this errors. So I needed to figure out how to make this work. Well, what you can do, turns out there's another subsystem for that. If we get the level editor subsystem, we can plug this in to our play simulate. If we compile this and save it, what's going to happen is now when we click the sim button, it should get all the selected actors for each one. It should check if it's a static mesh. If it is, it should simulate physics, and then it should play simulate. So let's go back. We compiled, we saved, we have, let's select all of our static mesh actors from 0 to 15. And let's click sim. Nothing. Why not? I'm going to escape out of this. And when I do that, there's a couple issues. First things first, the static meshes that we've created, they're not movable. So we need to make them movable. So over in the details for all of my selected meshes, I'm going to go ahead and make those movable. When I do that, if I click sim, still, it's working. Now it's starting to work. We're good. It's chugging a little bit because my machine is old, but overall, the sim worked. However, I don't have, when I stop the sim, they all snap back to where they started from. So I thought, okay, what I want to try to do is I want to try to capture the positions that the objects are in at the end of the sim, or whenever I click the apply button, and then somehow apply those back to the original transform. So let's do that. And the way we're going to do that is I'm going to go back to our widget, and I'm going to, in the apply button, I'm going to create our onClicked event. And what I want to do in here is a couple things. First, we're going to need a variable. And I'm going to create a variable called updated transforms. And I'm going to set this to be an array of transform. So here's our array of transforms. And when we start, the first thing I need to do is I need to clear that array. So let's just clear this. So let's get this and clear it. Okay. And then what I want to do is for each of our selected actors, I want to store their transform. Like basically I want to store their transform when I click the apply button. So let's do the same thing. So let's get the selected actors. We're just going to copy and paste this. So this is going to get all the selected actors. And then for each one, I'm going to get the actor transform. And then I am going to add it to the array. Let's turn context sensitivity back on. Okay, for each of these, we're going to add this one. So now, as we come through here, we're going to be storing each of the cube's transforms into this updated transforms array. But the trick is we also need to end play. We need to stop the editor from playing so that we can then apply that back. Because if we apply it and then stop the editor, they're just going to snap back to where they are. So once this for loop is completed, first thing we need to do is editor end play. Here we go. And then what we'll do is we can get all of our selected actors, get selected actors. This is a mistake. I'm intentionally making a mistake here so you can see what happens. Okay, we're going to get selected actors, and then for each one, we are going to cast it to a static mesh. And then we're going to set our actor transform. Set the actor transform. And the actor transform we're going to set is going to be, we're going to get the same index, and here's our transform. All right, so theoretically, we're going to go through, we're going to snapshot all of our cubes transforms, then we're going to stop play, and then we're going to get all of our actors, and then for each one, we're going to go through and we're going to set our actor transforms. So let's give this a shot. Compile and save. Watch, it's going to work the first time. It shouldn't work. It shouldn't work when demos go well. Anyways, so here we are back in our thing. If we run sim, they're all going to start falling and simming. And then if I click apply, what happens is it's not stopping. Like there's a bunch of things that aren't happening. First off, it's not stopping. And this is where I started struggling with what exactly is going on. So what I found that I needed to do was, for here, when we get our selected actors, this editor in play, are we even hitting this? Let's see if we can put a break. Well, first let's put a breakpoint here, and then we'll put a breakpoint here. So now, if we sim, that's fine. We can click apply now. There we go. We hit our first breakpoint. If I go ahead and continue, we do hit our second breakpoint. It worked. Maybe I just didn't click apply. Anyways, but the problem is you'll notice they all snap back to where they started from. So that's not the goal here. Let's remove our breakpoints. All right, for some reason, even though we've ended play, when we get our selected actors and we apply it, they all snap back to where they were. So my first thought was, there's not enough time for it to finish in play and then apply the transform. So I thought, you know what? I'll put a delay in here. Let's just put a delay in here and see if that works. Let's drop a delay in here. Delay. And I'm going to make the delay 2 seconds. So let's compile and save that. And we'll go ahead and sim. Get them far enough along. And then click apply. They snap back 2 seconds. Perfect. Applying the transform at the end with a delay worked out. Now, there's a couple other things that I think are worth noting. Originally, when I did this get selected actors, I had to be much more specific about whether or not I was getting the actors that were in the world or the actor subsystem. So what I actually did in the end was, rather than getting the selected actors here, I actually ended up getting the editor actor subsystem, and I ended up using get selected level actors instead, just to use the subsystem instead. Because what I found was, when I was doing this originally, there was a difference between the actors that were selected based on the editor actor subsystem and the actors that were selected as part of the level editor subsystem. So in both cases, in my final script, I actually ended up using the subsystem. I'm just going to fill that in here for both of these, just to kind of get back to where I was. Okay, we can compile this and save it, and we'll just double check that this all still works. Oh, quick note. After you end the sim, you'll notice that all of your manipulators no longer work. You can't rotate, move, anything, and it's because it resets your mode. So there is no active mode, so if you just switch this back to selection, you'll be able to move them up in space. So at this point, we've got all of our actors, they sim. If we sim, they'll start falling again. And as they fall, hit the ground, we'll just click apply again just to test that everything's great. Let's call this good. So we push apply, there's a 2-second delay, except I didn't actually hit apply. There we go, we hit apply, 2-second delay. They snap to where they were. So we're almost there. You know, our placement system is working. We've got this pretty cleaned up. Everything's ready to go. The only thing that we're missing from the original demo that I showed you, I believe, is the randomization of the rotations to start with. Now, there's a lot of different things that you could do to change this up and make it more robust and more user-friendly. We'll talk about those in a second. So, but let's at least match the tool that I demoed in the beginning. And what we'll do is we'll add in that rotation. So what we're going to do is, once we do our, let's make some room here. I'm just going to move this up. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to set the actor rotation, and I'm going to fill this in here. And I'm going to make a rotator. And in order to make that rotator, I am going to get a random, not a random float in range. And for my range, I'm going to do 20 to 340, I think. Just because if it moves 0, that's kind of pointless. So let's go 20 to 340. Control C, Control B. We'll get 3 of these, simply because I'm not sure if they would all evaluate to the same or 3 separate evals. We can double check that in a second. So we get all that, we set our random range. At that point, I believe we should be good. I think we should have a matching tool. So let's compile and save this. Something's wrong with my mouse, it's not clicking properly, but that is okay. So again, I have to put my mode back to selection, move these up in space. Now when I sim this, you'll notice they all rotate. And if I escape out, if I sim it again, they'll rotate again and stop. And if I apply, can't. My mouse is just not working. So let's sim and apply, and they'll go to where they were when I click the apply button. If I go back to move mode, move it up a little bit more, sim again, they'll randomly rotate. Let's apply that. And then let's just do one more test. The test is, sometimes when you evaluate these random floats, each time the pen gets evaluated, it gets reevaluated. I'm curious if we can just use one of these and feed it into all 3. If this works, then basically we'll see not all the cubes would be the same. So let's just go ahead and sim this. Yeah, that looks good. So we can just use one. Sim it. Interesting. The new rotation is happening and it's sticking. It's staying there. That's wild. Let's see here. That's because we're getting our selected level actors. Oh, that's cool. So we could even use that as a placement tool at the beginning to randomize stuff within our scene, for example. So what do I mean by that? I mean, like, after we sim, if we wanted to randomize rotation on anything, we can just pick it and run this exact same kind of code, which is cool. Okay, so at this point, compile save, we have very quickly created it's kind of like, it could easily be used as a prop placement tool. Some other things that you could potentially do with this is, rather than the actors you have selected in your scene, you could create a list or a pool of actors or static mesh objects to choose from. You could randomly pick those, you could randomly spawn them, then sim them and drop them. You know, I just think for set dressing and some things like this, this could be a really, really cool, fun thing to have. Now, that is a secondary win in the overall tutorial. The main point of this was to create an introduction for editor utility widgets, kind of hopefully help save you all some of the pain that I went through as trying to figuring out. When I originally went through this, I was completely unaware of all of these new level editor subsystems, the editor actor subsystem. There's so many new subsystems. You can literally right click and type subsystem and you'll see them come up. If you are struggling with something, you can't get an actor to stick, or it's different when it's running versus not, etc., you may need to be using a different subsystem. So let's wrap up this training tutorial. Today we were able to make a rudimentary prop placement tool using Unreal Engine 5.1 this was, and a little bit of blueprints, specifically the editor utility widget. If you're new, let us know how this went. This video was geared more towards intermediate. We moved a little bit fast and we assumed some basic understanding of Unreal, but we'd love to hear how it went for somebody who's completely new to Unreal as well. If you're a guru, don't hesitate to let us know if there's something that you think we could have explained better, or maybe something's blatantly wrong. If, depending on the feedback, if we need to re-record this video, I'm happy to do that. It gets easier each time. I know this because I've had to re-record this video many times, especially after I deleted all my video files on accident once. As always, if you like this type of content, you want us to keep making this type of content, please support the channel. Let us know. Spread the word, let people know what we're doing, and don't hesitate to throw in the comments or ask questions about what else we might want to record, because we do want to be making content that you all want to see. In addition, we have our twice weekly live streams. Hop in there, ask questions about Unreal Engine, blueprints, game development, real-time experience, and virtual production. Basically anything to do with Unreal. Those are twice weekly. Wednesday mornings at 8 a.m., Sunday nights at 10:15 p.m. That's Pacific Standard Time, but do check the schedule in YouTube or follow us on Twitter for updates. Sometimes we do have to move those around, but we've been pretty consistent over the last year with those times and dates. As always, thanks for checking out the video. Hope to see you in an upcoming live stream soon. Take it easy.